Well, Andrew Sullivan's cover story on the politics of sex was all over Meet the Press yesterday because the culture war seemed to have exploded all over again. Damon, you're such an expert on the culture wars, and you're an editor, and you edited Andrew Sullivan's piece this week for Newsweek magazine. So what do you think is going on?
Well, it's really an amazing development because Obama came into office saying that he would kind of move beyond those old battles that have hit the country for the last several decades since the 60s, and it really hasn't turned out that way. The right, whenever an issue that's appropriate comes along, fastens on it as an opportunity to restart these old battles because it helps to rally their base. And you've certainly seen this over the whole contraception ruling over the last few weeks. And the piece by Andrew is just fascinating because he actually comes down and saying that Obama did overshoot on this issue and went too far, did encroach on religious freedom of the Catholic Church, but he also thinks that the compromise announced by the president actually resolved things perfectly. And most liberal Catholics agreed with him, and it's fascinating.
And of course, Andrew himself is a Catholic.
Yeah, Andrew himself is a Catholic, and on midday Friday, after Obama announced this compromise, the Catholic bishops at first seemed to think it was okay, but then later in the afternoon, they put out a news statement in which they backed off and said, "No, this is still war." It's as if there was a palace coup within the Catholic bishops' conference over this.
Well, Justine, I mean, you're executive editor at Newsweek. Supervising the stories that went to press. I mean, do you think that it's over, this issue, or is it going to keep exploding? I mean, has Obama put it to bed, or is this just going to go on making a huge mess for him? Because a lot of people don't agree with Andrew's point of view. They think that Obama actually has stepped very badly on a mine, and this is actually going to go on exploding all the way through the campaign.
I think it may explode through the campaign, but I agree with Andrew that I think this has been a win for Obama. Again, because the right has pushed so far over to the right and seems to be completely out of touch with where everyday Roman Catholics are. If you look at the stats in the piece, most Roman Catholics use birth control, and most of them even think that, I think it's more than non-Catholics think that it should be paid for by and covered by health insurance. So this does seem to be another case where the extreme right is out of touch with kind of the middle right.
Well, what do you think it's going to do for Romney, Damon? I mean, obviously, in some ways, you could say this really was a bad day for Romney because it's pushed everybody towards Santorum.
That's right. Santorum is the one who's really well positioned to benefit from this in the short term, meaning that it really could energize the religious right, get evangelicals, especially in the South. We have Super Tuesday coming up in early March, to really rally around Santorum. But as Andrew remarks at the end of his piece, can that really be anything but good news for Obama? And Romney, meanwhile, he tries, as he tries in all things, to appeal to everyone on the right, but no one is going to find him a more convincing proponent for the far right than Santorum is.
I mean, what kind of marks are you giving Obama, Justine, for sort of his handling of religious issues in general? I mean, he really sort of got on the wrong side of Jews for a time, right?
I think he has poor marks for the way that he's handled almost every religious issue, but he seems to find his way back because everybody else again oversteps, which is exactly what happened on the Israel issue, which ties, of course, into one of our other main stories in the magazine on whether or not Israel is going to attack Iran before Obama gets a handle on the situation. Obama completely alienated the hard right or hard left, whatever we want to call it, of the Jewish community when Netanyahu came here and he had confirmed the 1967 borders again, got everybody very upset. But on the other hand, it is, again, where the center sits. So once he clarified his position at AIPAC, all calmed down again.
Of course, Dan Kleibman, who's a really terrific national security reporter, has done this big piece in the magazine this week about the Iran versus Israel conflict. How do you think in the piece, Justine, that he really comes over Obama in that?
Calculating, careful, and I think in some ways indecisive. It is this idea that you can play all sides at the same time, have 3 or 4 strategies simultaneously running, and one wonders if Israel really does attack Iran first, does that mean that all of those simultaneous policy tracks have been a failure?
Well, Damon, a lot of the time what you're seeing, of course, is political interest versus national interest so much of the time. I mean, how do you think he's doing on that sort of constant push and pull of national interest versus political interest?
Well, I think it's a very difficult balancing act, especially in our time with media kind of hitting him from all sides. I think, on the contraception issue, on some of the foreign policy issues in the Middle East, he's been somewhat awkward. But as Andrew points out in his essay this week, Obama has by now a pretty good track record of, at least in the effect of these things, of kind of getting his critics to overreach and then backing away and leaving them out on a limb.
He is brilliant at that, exactly right. He has this kind of cool way of just stirring up the pot and then just waiting and seeing over the hill, which is interesting.
Exactly.
We'll see how it plays out, and I think that the piece actually has already stimulated so much reaction that I think it's going to go on playing all week. Final word on this week's issue, Damon?
Santorum, medieval for president.
War.
Savonarola. You're great.
Thanks.
Damon is a TV star.
Yeah.